Hey guys, welcome to the Blue Deck Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Mazarak. If you're new here, welcome. One thing you should know though, these shows are intended to be listened to in order. Today we'll cover chapter 16 of my book, Into the Attic of the World. To hear what you've missed, and you've missed a lot at this point, scroll all the way back through the available shows to episode 1, that's in season 1. Okay, thank you to everyone asking about the progression of the book. As you know, it's getting published, that's great, and I can't wait to get it into the hands of readers. All the editing is done now, but there's still work to be done. I'll have more on that soon. However, this is a podcast, so I don't know when you're hearing this. If it's in the future, it might be available right now. Go check it out. I'm sure it's available on my website, thebluedeck.com. If it's in stock there, that's probably the best place to get it. But if for some reason you can't find it there, go to Amazon or look for it at your local brick-and-mortar book retailer. If you go to a shop and can't find it, just ask. I'm sure they can get it. I think that's everything. Are you ready for the next chapter? I am, so take it away, Layla.
Arriving at Salvation Mountain, what Charles and his friends found was not a mountain at all, but an enormous construction of tree branches, tires, and dismembered car doors, and hay bales heaped together and covered with clay. Everything was painted, even the ground, with a kaleidoscope of colors and messages of repentance and God's enduring love. The artist responsible for this monument, the man of the mountain, welcomed the newcomers, referring to the captain as one of the 7 and to the other kids as knights. As Charles, William, and Ozzy explored the mountain, Captain Kidd and Don met with the mountain painter to discuss the comings and goings of travelers headed west to a place called Atsuma, the great city. Also, the distant sounds of engines and the faraway cloud of trailing dust alerted them to a people the mountain man called Kybees, or Moonfolk. Who are these people? Charles doesn't know, but as he departs Salvation Mountain, the captain warns them to be ready to fight. Finally, before following Captain Kidd back into the desolation of desert, Charles once again digs in his heels. Where are they going? How long will they be away from the world? And when will they get back home? Charles wants to know. Dawn, the recently instated chief officer, goes to Charles asking him to come along, but even she cannot deny the sensibility of his protest. When Dawn presents Charles' questions to Captain Kidd, the captain offers one thin slice of hope. They will go to a town called Dollop Tree. There they will phone the king of Atsuma and tell him their quest and that the fugitive Cassetine is headed for the great city. Perhaps after that, Charles and his friends can return to the world below. "16 west along the desert road. The captain halted our progress at the crest of a low hill. The Kybees were close now, the sounds of their revving engines growling and barking across the desert basin. Into the sky west of us, a drifting dust cloud marked their approach. Captain Kidd took off his backpack, unslung his rifle, and inspected his ragtag subordinates. Then, walking over to Ozzy, who was practicing his swing with a baseball bat, our leader waved for him to stop. "You won't be hitting baseballs. Let's see you swing that thing like you're trying to crack a skull."
Ozzy considered the morbid critique, then went about clubbing dry bushes like he was a caveman surrounded by saber-toothed cats. Will that be necessary, I wondered? My grip tightened on the Swiss Army knife. I imagined thrusting the small blade into someone's neck and blood spouting out like ketchup from a squeeze bottle. I looked at the knife in my hand. The blade was folded closed, and I was glad. I was a kid from suburbia. Kids like me didn't fight with knives. Why would we? The thought of a turf war in my neighborhood was ridiculous. If any boy tried to start something like that where I was from, his father would be the one to finish it, likely with a belt across the troublemaker's backside. The captain examined Ozzy's violence with the concentration of a wildlife biologist trying to detect patterns in the random movements of a squirrel. Much better, he said. He pulled off his desert robe over his head and stuffed it into his pack. As he straightened his vest, I thought how his many patches were like a peacock's feathers. Or perhaps they were more akin to a World War II pilot marking his aircraft with the number of planes he'd shot out of the sky. And another possibility, the vest with all the patches and the captain's crisp plaid shirt and khaki trousers, also his cap, can't forget about that, were his uniform if he was about to engage in formal greetings with strange people. To be out of uniform would be unprofessional. I pulled the t-shirt turban off my head, rolled it up, and hung it in my back pocket. William and Ozzy followed my lead. Captain Kidd turned his bright amber eyes on me. "You ready, Charles?" "I am," I said, glad he hadn't called me by the clunky title electro-technical officer. Beyond the flat-bottomed basin, perhaps 2 football fields from our side to the raised lip on the other, I saw the first movements of the Moonfolk, the Kybees, as the man of the mountain had called them. There were 2 figures riding dirt bikes with motors that sounded like whining chainsaws. The riders stopped at the edge of the slope. From such a distance, their thin bodies and bulbous heads made them look like giant insects. William shifted his feet. "Should we move off the trail?" The captain glanced behind him into the sky. "I suppose we'd better, but spread out, okay?" As we got into position, one of the distant motorcycle riders looked back over his shoulder and waved for the rest of his party to advance. Then, with hands on the grips of his motorcycles, he revved his engine, leaned forward, and took the bike down the sloped trail into the sand below. The other rider followed, and then came the rest of the Kybees. There were 13 vehicles by my count, the 2 motorcycles and the rest a mix of dune buggies and modified cars. One vehicle looked like a fenderless VW Beetle on knobby balloon tires. All the machines were the color of dirt and rust, fading in and out of dust plumes. Some of the buggies flew triangular flags on tall, thin poles that waved back and forth in the air. My stomach turned. I had to be ready to fight. But who were these people, and why would they want to hurt us? Were they pirates, outlaws, desert drifters who roamed in violent packs like wolves searching for water or oil or fresh meat? Captain Kidd stepped forward, his rifle held in clean hands. He looked so much like a child, even though he had a gun. What grown-up would listen to him? And yet the shadow he cast down the rutted trail was long. He reached up with his left hand and tugged the black brim of his hat, angling it downward with confidence that bordered on menacing. As his hand drifted to support the wooden rifle stock, I thought again how he carried himself like a hero cowboy before a shootout. William stood beside one of the giant cacti. He had no weapon. That was all right. If it came to fighting, he'd use his fist. He nodded to me, his eyes hidden behind sunglasses. I nodded in return. Ozzy rested his baseball bat over his shoulder, his Jose Canseco jersey, white with green and gold trim, unbuttoned and flopping open at the collar. He bit at his chapped lips. If he was scared or getting nervous, it didn't show. Then I realized I wasn't nervous either, nor was I scared. The Kybees had us outnumbered, and they had vehicles, probably weapons too. But that didn't seem to matter. Why not? Maybe it was Captain Kidd's stone-like coolness, or because the man of the mountain had called us knights. We were on a quest after all. Or maybe it was just I was with my friends. Dawn stood near between me and the captain. She'd taken off the white sheet, and her hair was a mess of glowing strands. She held her notebook in front of her, her thumb securing a blue Bic pen to the folder's laminated cover. Her backpack was red, the same color as her dad's Corvette. Was she a knight also? Could girls even be knights? I didn't think so, but what did I know of knights or quests or other worlds? The approaching motorcycles came to a stop a dozen yards in front of the captain. The helmeted figures regarded one another, then shut off their engines, looking less like insects now that they were closer. Besides their dusty helmets, they wore ragged scarves, tight-fitting long-sleeved shirts, and slim pants. Their feet were clad with tall, lace-up boots. One had a leather armband studded with rusty, skull-shaped cleats. On his belt was a holstered revolver. The other man had crisscross machetes on his back. When they took off their helmets, I was surprised to see they were Asian teenagers, maybe only 13 or 14 years old. The one at the right had straight shoulder-length hair. The other was shaved bald. Something was wrong with that one's face. It looked abnormally long in the chin. "Ahoy!" the captain called out. The long-faced biker grunted and sniffed the air. He said something, but I couldn't hear it over the approaching buggies. The others in the eastbound convoy rolled to a stop, their knobby tires dragging at gravel. The cars and buggies formed a long line behind the two leading motorcyclists. I wondered why they even used the trail. Their vehicles were made for off-roading, so why not just spread out? Then I thought of Star Wars, how the Sand People walked in single-file lines to hide their numbers. I leaned over and whispered to Dawn, "Did you and the Cap talk to the mountain man about these guys?" She spared me a glance out the corner of her eye. "Not really." "What'd you talk about?" I asked. Dawn motioned with her chin to the line of Kybees. "I'll tell you later." To look away from her wind-blown hair took effort. But when I did, I saw the desert strangers climbing off their bikes and out of their carts. One of the motorcycle teenagers went to the passenger side of a dune buggy Beetle, opening the door for a heavy-set woman. The woman carried a white purse with a picture of Minnie Mouse on the flap. She lifted a pair of goggles under her forehead and pulled the layers of scars down off her face to reveal, not a woman, she's a girl. The girl was a little older than the motorcycle scout, but not by much. Also, she wasn't Asian, but black, with smooth, rounded cheeks and large, threatening eyes. Wisps of hair swirled about her face, and she wiped them away. Then, after exchanging words with the motorcyclist, she slipped the revolver from the boy's holster, turning her dangerous eyes on us. As coolly as I could, I worked open the longer of the two blades on my knife. The stretched-faced motorcycle scout, the one with the machetes, was watching this with interest. Could I kill that kid with a Swiss Army knife? Stupid to think that I could. And yet I had no thought of running away. The captain bolted his rifle, and that was good enough for me. Hey guys, I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you to my wonderful daughter Layla for doing the recaps. Great job, kiddo. And I like your little squiggly sound at the end. La 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 la. A real benefit to the show in my humble opinion. To the rest of you listening, thanks for going on this journey with me. There's a lot to the story left to unfold, so tune in, subscribe, tell a friend, share us on social media, and come on back, because I know you'll be interested to hear about the Kybees. Now, let's hear that little squiggle again.
Okay, now.